Ladies and gentlemen, there is a season for all things, joy and sorrow, gain and loss, laughter and weeping. Yet in the moments when the heart is heavy and the path is uncertain, the greatest strength is found in lifting our voices in praise. Consider this: when the storm rages and the wind howls, does the tree that bends to the tempest not stand firmer than the one that resists? So it is with the soul that yields in trust, choosing to bless the name of the Most High rather than curse the hardship before them. In the course of life, there are moments of abundance and joy, but there are also seasons of trial that test the very core of one's being. Hardship comes like the waves of the sea, unrelenting and strong, seeking to shake the foundation upon which one stands. Yet it is in these very moments that faith is refined, much like gold in the furnace. For gold, though precious, does not shine in its natural state. It must pass through fire, be purified of its impurities, and emerge stronger and more radiant. So too is the soul of one who endures trials with steadfast faith. Consider the tree planted by the river. When the sun is gentle and the rains are plentiful, it grows with ease, spreading its branches wide. But when the drought comes, when the winds rise and the storm beats against it, the roots must go deeper to find sustenance. It is not in the times of comfort that the tree grows strongest, but in the seasons of struggle. So it is with the heart that seeks after divine truth. When all is well, it is easy to believe, to trust, to give thanks. But when darkness falls and the road is uncertain, true faith is revealed. Many seek to avoid suffering, to flee from difficulty, believing that trials are signs of abandonment or punishment. Yet has it not been spoken that those whom the Almighty loves are shaped by his hand? The blacksmith does not hammer on clay, for it would break, nor does he refine what has no value. Instead, he places the metal in the fire, striking it upon the anvil, not to destroy, but to strengthen. Each blow, each flame is part of the shaping, the refining, the preparing of something greater. So too does suffering work within the life of the faithful. There is a temptation in difficult times to ask, why has this come upon me? Yet the wise heart does not ask why, but for what purpose. For every trial is allowed for a reason, and within it there is a hidden blessing. The grain of wheat must fall to the ground and be buried before it can bring forth fruit. The caterpillar must struggle within the cocoon before it can emerge in beauty. The night must come before the dawn. In the same way, affliction is not the end, but the beginning of something unseen, something yet to be revealed. Consider the men and women of old, those who walked in faith before us. Did they not endure trials? Were they not tested beyond their strength? Yet they did not curse the heavens or turn away. Instead, they trusted in the promise that all things, even suffering, work together for a greater purpose. They understood that endurance produces character, and character gives birth to hope, a hope that does not fade even in the darkest of nights. For what is faith if it is not tested? A house built upon the sand may stand in the gentle breeze, but when the storm rises, it will surely fall. Yet the house built upon the rock, though it faces the same storm, remains unmoved. It is not spared from the wind or the rain, but it endures because its foundation is strong. So too is the heart that praises in the midst of hardship. It does not pretend that pain is easy, nor does it deny the weight of sorrow, but it chooses to stand firm, trusting that the one who allows the trial is also the one who will carry them through it. The faithful soul does not say, I will praise when the trial is over, for then the praise is easy. Instead, it lifts its voice even in the midst of suffering, knowing that endurance in affliction leads to a deeper faith, a stronger heart, and a greater testimony of the goodness of the Almighty. For the fire that refines gold does not destroy it, and the storm that shakes the tree only causes its roots to grow deeper. So too, the trials of life are not meant to break the faithful, but to strengthen them, to prepare them for the greater glory that awaits beyond the storm. To praise in the midst of hardship is not the way of the world, for the heart of man is prone to cry out in distress, to question, to seek escape from suffering. Yet there is a mystery in the power of praise. When one chooses to bless rather than lament, to trust rather than despair, there is a transformation that takes place within the soul. Praise in difficult times is not a denial of pain, nor is it an act of blind optimism. Rather, it is a declaration of trust in the one who reigns beyond the circumstances. It is the assurance that trials are not without purpose, and that even in the valley of affliction, there is a guiding hand that never forsakes. The human heart is easily swayed by the shifting tides of life. When the days are bright, gratitude flows effortlessly, but when darkness comes, the same heart struggles to lift its voice. Yet has it not been spoken that those who trust are like a tree planted by the waters, unmoved by drought or storm? The tree does not depend on the changing seasons, but on the deep roots that draw from a source unseen. So too must the soul be rooted in trust, knowing that the one who created the heavens is not absent in the trials of his creation. There is a difference between trusting in what is seen and trusting in what is unseen. To trust when the way is clear requires little strength, but to trust when the road is covered in shadows, that is where faith is proved. Consider the traveler who sets out on a journey through unfamiliar land. If he can see the path before him, he walks with ease. But if the way is covered in darkness, he must rely on something greater than sight. He must trust in the voice that guides him, in the promise that he will be led safely through. Such is the nature of praising in difficult times. It is not the response of one who understands every trial, but of one who believes that even when the purpose is hidden, the promise remains. To praise in suffering is not to ignore the pain, but to place it in the hands of the Almighty. The heart that chooses to worship in affliction does so not because the burden is light, but because it knows that the burden is not carried alone. A child, when lost, does not cry out in despair when they know their father is near. They call upon him, knowing he will come, knowing he will lead them home. So too must the faithful call out, not in hopelessness, but in trust, knowing that deliverance is not a question of if, but of when. Praise shifts the heart from fear to faith, from sorrow to expectation. The walls of the prison do not bind the one who sings, for their spirit is already free. The chains of despair break when the voice lifts in gratitude, not for the trial itself, but for the one who is greater than the trial. In battle, the warrior does not wait for victory to lift a cry of triumph. He shouts before the fight, knowing that the victory is already secured. So must the soul praise before the deliverance comes, for faith does not wait to see, it believes and rejoices even before the dawn. Has it not been seen throughout the ages that those who trust are never abandoned? The storm may rage, but the foundation remains firm. The night may linger, but the morning will come. Praise is not offered because life is without suffering, but because suffering is not the end. The faithful do not rejoice because the trial is easy, but because they know that every hardship is held in the hands of one who is mighty to save. Therefore, let the voice of praise rise, not when the battle is over, but even as the battle rages. Let trust be the anthem of the heart, not only in the days of peace, but in the days of trial. For praise is not merely a response to goodness, it is an act of faith, a declaration that even in the storm, the sun still shines beyond the clouds. And those who trust, those who praise, in the midst of suffering, will find that their sorrow is not wasted, but transformed into a testimony of endurance, of faith, and of a joy that cannot be shaken. There is a battle that rages beyond what the eyes can see. Though the struggles of life may seem to be of flesh and blood, they are often rooted in the unseen. Wars of the heart, wars of the mind, wars against fear, doubt, and despair. In such battles, strength alone does not bring victory, nor does mere endurance. The weapons of this world cannot bring peace to the soul, nor can they silence the storms of the spirit. Yet there is a weapon, mighty in power, that overcomes darkness and brings forth deliverance, the power of praise. When the heart lifts its voice in worship, it does not merely speak words, it wages war against all that seeks to destroy peace and hope. For praise is not only an offering of thanksgiving, it is a declaration of truth, a proclamation that the forces of sorrow and fear have no hold over the one who trusts. Just as light drives out darkness, so too does praise drive out the heavy burdens that weigh upon the soul. It is not a mere song or empty words, but a force that shakes the foundations of bondage and brings forth freedom. Consider the prisoner in chains, bound by walls of stone with no way of escape. By the wisdom of the world, his fate is sealed. Yet if his voice rises in praise, though the chains remain on his wrists, his spirit is already free. For true freedom is not measured by the absence of struggle, but by the presence of faith. The heart that worships in affliction stands stronger than the one that curses its fate, for it understands that victory is not found in escaping trials, but in overcoming them. Throughout the ages, those who have lifted their voices in praise have seen the walls of their captivity crumble before them. When fear surrounded them, they did not retreat. Instead, they sang. When the enemy seemed too great, they did not flee. Instead, they declared the greatness of the one who was with them. And when all seemed lost, they did not surrender to despair. Instead, they trusted, knowing that the battle was not theirs alone. For has it not been spoken that the battle is won, not by the sword nor by strength, but by the power of the Almighty? The warrior who stands in his own might will grow weary, but the one who stands in praise will find that his strength is renewed. The voice that cries out in worship is not merely a voice, it is a weapon, tearing down strongholds, breaking the grip of fear, and opening the way for deliverance. Praise confuses the enemy, for it defies all logic. When hardship comes, the world expects sorrow. When trials rise, the world expects despair. But when the faithful respond with praise, the forces of darkness are shaken, for they do not understand a heart that rejoices in suffering, a soul that sings in the storm, or a spirit that worships in the wilderness. The enemy seeks to silence the voice of faith, for he knows that a heart filled with praise cannot be held captive. The greatest victories are not won in the absence of struggle, but in the presence of unwavering trust. And praise is the expression of that trust. To lift one's voice in worship is to declare that the trial does not have the final say, that the storm will not last forever, and that the promises of the Almighty are greater than the present suffering. It is to stand firm, not because the path is easy, but because the one who walks beside us is greater than the obstacles ahead. Therefore, let the voice of praise rise, not only in times of peace, but in times of trial. Let worship be the weapon that breaks every chain, that shatters every lie, that brings light into the darkest night. For no battle is too great, no sorrow too deep, and no storm too strong for the power of praise. Those who choose to worship in their struggles will find that they are not alone, for the one who reigns over all is near to those who trust in him, and in his presence every battle is already won. In the midst of suffering, when the weight of trials presses heavily upon the soul, it is easy to feel abandoned, as though the heavens have turned silent and the heart must bear its burdens alone. Yet though pain may cloud the vision and sorrow may whisper that all hope is lost, the truth remains unchanged. The divine presence is never absent, even in suffering. In fact, It is in the deepest valleys of affliction that the nearness of the Almighty is most profound. When all is well, when the path is smooth and the days are filled with joy, gratitude flows effortlessly. The heart finds it easy to acknowledge the hand of the Creator in seasons of abundance. But what of the days of hardship? What are the moments when prayers seem unanswered, when suffering lingers longer than the heart can bear? It is in these times that the faithful must remember that silence is not absence, and waiting is not abandonment. The same hands that formed the heavens are still at work, shaping, refining, and preparing something greater than can yet be seen. Consider the way of a loving father who watches over his child. There are times when he walks beside them, speaking, guiding, and instructing, but there are also times when he steps back, not to leave, but to allow them to grow, to learn, to stand strong. In the same way, the presence of suffering does not mean the absence of divine love. The trials of life are not punishments, but preparations, shaping the soul for a purpose beyond the present struggle. Even in the darkest moments, there is companionship, for has it not been spoken that the Almighty is close to the brokenhearted? The tears that fall are not unseen, and the cries of the weary do not go unheard. Just as a shepherd does not abandon his flock when the night falls, so too does the divine presence remain near, watching, protecting, and leading the weary through the storm. But how does one recognize this presence in the midst of pain? The world seeks evidence in the removal of suffering, believing that divine favor is proven by ease and comfort. Yet true faith sees beyond circumstances. It understands that the presence of the Most High is not found in the absence of trials, but in the sustaining power that carries the soul through them. When strength is failing, yet endurance remains, it is not by human will alone, but by the unseen hand that upholds. When hope flickers but does not go out, it is not by mere chance, but by the light of divine promise that refuses to be extinguished. Consider the furnace that refines gold. The heat is intense, the flames seem relentless, but they do not destroy. Instead, they purify, removing the impurities and revealing the true beauty beneath. In the same way, suffering, though painful, is not meant for destruction, but for transformation. And in that refining fire, the presence of the Almighty is closest, not as an observer, but as the refiner, ensuring that the flames do not consume, but only perfect. If the faithful could see with eternal eyes, they would know that they are never alone. They would see that in the moments they felt most abandoned, they were in fact most carried. That in the seasons of deepest sorrow, divine arms held them even closer. That even when prayers seemed to go unanswered, they were being answered in ways beyond human understanding. Therefore, let the weary take heart. Let the suffering not be mistaken for separation, but rather as evidence of a work being done, a purpose unfolding, a transformation taking place. For those who trust, who hold fast, even when the way is unclear, will one day look back and see that they were never forsaken. And in that revelation, their sorrow will turn to joy, their burdens will become testimonies, and their trials will be remembered not as moments of abandonment, but as seasons where the presence of the Almighty was nearer than ever before. As we have journeyed through these truths, let us take to heart that praising in difficult times is not merely an act of obedience, but a source of strength, a weapon in the battle, and a pathway to divine closeness. The storms of life will come, the trials will test the very core of our faith, and the weight of sorrow may seek to bend us low. Yet, in those very moments, the power of praise lifts us beyond our circumstances and anchors us in a truth greater than what we see. Praise is not the denial of suffering, but the declaration that suffering does not have the final word. It is the choice to trust even when the road is unclear, to worship even when the heart is weary, and to stand firm knowing that every trial is shaping, refining, and preparing us for a greater purpose. The darkness of night may seem endless, but the dawn is certain. The weight of affliction may press upon the soul, but it is never beyond the strength of the Almighty to uphold. Let us then be a people who praise, not only in times of plenty, but also in times of trial. Let us lift our voices, not just when the battle is won, but even as it rages, knowing that the victory is already secured. And let us walk in faith, unwavering, knowing that we are never abandoned, never forgotten, and never without hope. For the one who is with us in joy is the same one who carries us through the storm. And in his presence, every suffering is turned to glory, every tear is accounted for, and every trial is woven into a story of redemption. So let the weary rejoice, let the brokenhearted lift their eyes, and let the faithful stand firm. For praise in the midst of hardship is not just an act of faith, it is the evidence of trust, the mark of endurance, and the pathway to victory